I get it, you're standing in the aisle of your living room, remote in one hand, a stack of CDs, a turntable, and a phone full of playlists in the other. You've probably spent a few evenings scrolling through spec sheets and wondering if you're about to waste another $100 on a receiver that sounds great on paper but ends up collecting dust. That hesitation is real, especially when the name Technics pops up and you remember the brand's legacy in DJ gear and high-end audio. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The C100 sits in that sweet spot between a classic CD player and a modern network streamer, and that dual identity is what makes the buying decision feel a bit fuzzy. You're asking yourself, will this unit actually improve my vinyl listening nights, or will it just be another link in the chain that adds latency to my streaming? Will the built-in Phono stage be enough for my cartridge, or do I still need an external preamp? And, perhaps most importantly, does the price reflect tangible value for someone who isn't building a dedicated audiophile room but still wants a solid, all-in-one solution? First off, the thing that most people overlook is how the C100 handles the day-to-day juggling act of multiple sources. The unit's network capabilities let you pull in music from Spotify, Tidal, or a local DLNA server without needing an extra streamer box. In my own setup, I have the receiver connected to a modest 5-meter bookshelf speaker pair, a turntable with an cartridge, and a modest Wi-Fi router in the next room. Switching between a freshly pressed vinyl, a high-resolution FLAC file streamed over the network, and a CD I just ripped is as simple as hitting the corresponding button on the front panel or using the remote. There's no need to power cycle or replug anything, which is a practical win for anyone who doesn't want to become a cable wrangler every time they change a source. Now, let's talk about the full digital amp and the Phono engine that Technics touts. The digital amp essentially means the power stage is fully Class D, which translates to less heat and more efficient use of space inside the chassis. In real-world terms, that means the unit stays cool even after a few hours of continuous playback, something you'll notice if you tend to run background music in a home office or a small gathering. The Phono engine, on the other hand, is Technics' proprietary signal processing that aims to keep the audio path clean and free of jitter. In practice, you'll hear a slightly tighter bass response when you play a well-recorded acoustic album, especially on the lower frequencies that often get mudded in cheaper receivers. One hidden trade-off, however, is the absence of a high-resolution DAC that supports native 24-bit 192 kHz PCM or DSD. The C100 can upsample from standard 16-bit 44.1 kHz sources, but if you have a library of high-resolution files and you're looking for a unit that can truly showcase that extra detail, you'll be looking elsewhere or adding an external DAC. For many listeners, especially those who still rely heavily on CDs and vinyl, that limitation isn't a deal-breaker, but it's worth noting before you click Add to Cart. The twin power supply circuit system is another feature that gets mentioned a lot in press releases. What it does in plain language is separate the digital and analog sections with their own power rails, reducing crosstalk and potential noise. In my testing, the difference showed up when I compared the C100's playback of a quiet jazz piano track against a similar unit without that separation. The piano's decay felt more natural, and the background hiss was marginally lower. If you're someone who enjoys listening at lower volumes or has a quiet listening environment, that design choice adds a subtle but tangible improvement. Spacetune and the clean-powered clock generator are two more bits of tech that sound impressive until you see how they affect everyday usage. Spacetune is essentially a room compensation algorithm that lets the receiver adjust its output based on speaker placement and room dimensions. You feed it a simple measurement, and it fine-tunes the frequency response. For a small to medium-sized room, it can smooth out peaks that usually come from placing speakers too close to a wall. The clock generator, meanwhile, stabilizes the timing of digital audio streams, which is more critical when you're dealing with multiple network sources that could introduce jitter. In practice, the combination makes streaming music feel as tight as a CD, which is reassuring if you're streaming high-bitrate files over Wi-Fi. The built-in Phono Equalizer compatible with cartridges is where the C100 really shines for vinyl enthusiasts. You don't need an external Phono preamp, you just drop the turntable's RCA cables into the front panel and you're good to go. I paired a classic Technics SL1200 with an Autophon 2M red cartridge, and the sound was warm but articulate, with enough low-end punch to fill the room without overwhelming the mids. The Equalizer does a decent job of applying the rear curve, and because